Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm your host, not Jason Miles. This is MToussaint here for another episode of This is Revolution podcast. Welcome or welcome back, and thanks for being here. Quick shout out to everyone who tuned in this week. Stefan and Quinn asked, are we living under the Epstein regime? Cuba broke down global geopolitics on What Fresh Hell? We discussed the documentary Louis Theroux, Inside the Manosphere. Jason and Mac will be back next week with valuable information about sports ball on Beyond the Red Zone. And we talked with Charles Derber this week about his new book, Fighting Oligarchy. If you missed any of those, check them out after this show. And as always, none of this happens without you, the viewers, the supporters, the patrons who keep TIR going. We're also very close to 20,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you're watching and not subscribed, hit the button. It's free. And if you watch and don't subscribe, technically, that's stealing. I'm sorry about the sirens. And if you want to support the show further, you can become a patron for as little as $3 a month. That gets you champagne rooms, movie nights, the crisis papers, and our weekly newsletter. And it helps keep TIR on air. All right, let's get to what you came here for. What is the anti-love economy? It's what happens when relationships are fully absorbed into the logic of the market. People become products, their traits become commodities. A person is now high value. They must bring something to the table. They must compete in the sexual marketplace, which sounds less like romance and more like LinkedIn for people trying to kiss. And what does that world actually look like? You, a romantic hopeful, presenting yourself as a product on a dating app, judged by an image, your personality compressed into 6 photos, and the lie that you love to travel, praying to the algorithm, a match, a coffee date, in a gentrifying neighborhood where you both pay for your own drink. You exchange talking points scraped from the bottom of the internet. You call your past heartbreak growth. Both of you quietly calculating the return on investment. You silently hope their transaction count is low. You promise to text. Yesterday, they said tomorrow. Today, they say nothing. You get ghosted because they've just been really busy, even though everyone is really busy. So you put more money into the app. Maybe the next one works. Maybe neither of you are addicted to sports betting, porn, or church. Maybe date night doesn't cost $150. Maybe love doesn't work like Uber surge pricing. Maybe marriage doesn't become a shared Google calendar of chores and resentment. Meanwhile, rent costs rise, grocery prices rise, war drums rise, and loneliness rises with them. While millions scroll through their phones at midnight, trying to decide if the stranger they just matched with is worth the emotional investment of a $6 latte. Welcome to the anti-love economy. Here to help us discuss this dystopian romantic hellscape is our distinguished all-lady person panel. First up is socialist, activist, labor organizer, and the 2020 Green Party vice presidential nominee. She is also the only glasses wearing dragon you'll ever meet. She is Angela Walker. Hello, Angela. How are you today?
Hey everybody, I had to unmute. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited for this discussion.
Awesome. So, also, we have an advocate for compassionate social policy and harm reduction, and an unapologetic lover of critters, food, and makeup, Ikoi Hiroe.
Oh,
Hello, hello.
hello.
We've got everybody here today. Let's see. Let me switch you and you. Okay. All right. So, we're here to talk about the anti-love economy. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for agreeing to help us unpack this dystopian romantic hellscape. We have some ground rules first. For the purpose of today's discussion, men will only be referred to as dudes, guys, males, the menses, XYs, man them, and my personal favorite, Scrotes. Somebody says here, Jason is monitoring the show.
Yeah,
He's monitoring the chat.
he's in the chat.
So I don't ruin his sterling reputation. Sterling.
Oh,
There's a word.
impeccable. Impeccable reputation.
There we go.
So have either of you used dating apps?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Really? What have your experiences been? Good or bad?
I'll go after.
Sounds like bad. Sounds like bad. Ikoi, you first.
I mean, I haven't actually had that terrible of an experience,
Mhm.
but it's also like I'm not someone that goes on dates and ever expects a relationship out of it.
What
Because
are you
they're
expecting?
they're an I mean, they're a stranger. So you may never, you have the entire gamut of like, you may never see them again, right?
Mm-hmm.
All the way to like, you may have a relationship of some kind. But I really don't like to meet strangers with any expectations because I think you're just setting yourself up to a certain degree. Or at least that's me, right? That's how I look at it.
So what does that mean in
Um,
terms of money? Do you have an expectation that you would pay for yourself or they would
oh
pay for you?
yeah, yeah. I generally don't let people. I mean, people have insisted on paying for me, before, but I never expect the other person to necessarily pay.
Mm-hmm. They have to fight you to pay.
Yeah, and it's also like I am, because this is a discussion that you see on the internet of like, oh, like, like I am more of, I don't do, expensive dates.
Mm-hmm. The average date costs about $150, $168 to $189.
Now, to me, that's insane.
Yeah.
All right. Like, I mean, and again, like these are all preferences and everyone has their own preferences. So there are plenty of people that say that they only want, to do like high effort dates. They're like, oh, like, if I'm going to spend, money on an outfit and, taking an hour to get ready and looking my best, like I'm going to, it's going to require a
Mm-hmm.
reason for me to show up, right? And it's like, okay, like if that's your preference, that's your preference. But I really like to just like sit down for coffee or sit down for a drink and have a conversation. So
Oh, so you're doing the coffee date first. You're not doing a whole dinner, movies, all of
oh
that.
God, no. No, hell
Mhm.
no.
I think that's a good idea, especially in this economy.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, and I mean, granted, I haven't gone out on like a date based on an app in a good while,
Hmm.
right? But I've never been, you know, from my younger days, like an expensive date person. I'm just not.
Hmm. Do you do the walks in the park?
Oh yeah. I mean, like, the freer the better.
Hmm. Very nice. We like that. Angela, what's your experience been? Are you going on $200 dates and getting all dolled up?
Baby, I'm Gen X. I don't know what a $200 date is. Like, dead ass. Who does that? Who does that?
Right.
No one does that. That's insane. Like, and it
Right?
doesn't tell you anything about the person you're with other than the fact that they know how to fling money around. I ain't even gonna lie. Like when y'all said walk in the park, I was like, yup.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, my wife, this is a really timely episode because my wife and I will have been married 3 years next week, which
Oh,
Wow.
right?
congratulations.
I feel like I
Thank
just found
you.
out about it.
Yeah, like our wedding anniversary is next week, and it's just like, and this is something I said once I got divorced the first time. I said I'd never do this shit again. I
Hmm.
promised myself. And
Hmm.
and thank you, Jason. And I met this absolutely fantastic person on a dating app. I used to be kind of embarrassed. Hi, baby. She in the chat.
Oh.
Geechee God, this is my old lady.
Oh.
And but I used to kind of dating apps and like y'all said, you don't go in with expectations or thinking, okay, this is going to yield something. It's just like, I think we're a very isolated culture in a lot of ways,
Hmm.
especially post COVID. Thank you,
Hmm.
Drea. Especially post COVID. And we have lost our ability to, I think, like relate in real time. And like being Gen X,
Mm-hmm.
you used to meet people and write their numbers down with a pen and paper and actually call them
Hmm.
and meet them in person and talk to them. And it's just like, what the heck, y'all? So like I didn't have expectations, and meeting somebody that you vibe with,
Hmm.
you go through all of this stuff like, all right, is this real? Are you trustworthy? Are you putting me on? Do you think I have money and I don't?
Right.
she'll,
Mm-hmm.
she'll get why I'm laughing at that. She thought I had bread.
Right.
I had no bread. but like we vibe in so many different ways, and it's just like, okay, I'm gonna step out on a limb and I'm gonna go and let's make a date. And she set up the most perfect date possible. She's from Charleston.
Hmm.
And so she found this black owned vegan restaurant, which
Ooh.
was wild
Ooh.
because there was nobody there. So it's like we had it to ourselves, and she'll tell you if you ask her, "Yeah, I printed it out for us." No, you didn't. This happened. But it was perfect and it was magical. And then she took me down to a park where there's is on like a big body of water where there's all these ships coming in and out because Charleston's a port city.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm watching tugboats and watching them bringing these big ships in, and I'm thinking, you could not have planned this better if you tried. If
Aww.
you tried. And that was it. That was it. Because we talked and got to feel each other out energetically. Like, who are you? What really matters to you? Versus all of these deep conversations that we've had on the phone. So I had a decent experience that came out of a dating app, but I did not go in with any expectations. I am mind blown that I met someone as amazing as she is. And I know that that is not a typical experience. It was not my experience prior on dating apps, but I think we do things to combat even if we're not conscious of it. It's a very human thing to want to combat the isolation capitalism forces on you and has you thinking is the way to be. We are not islands. We are not built to exist outside of community.
Do you mind me asking which app you met on? Do you want to do a
It
little
was
commercial for it? I don't
it
know.
was, it was
You're not
her.
getting paid.
It was her, the gay girl app.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to know something works.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot of slogging through some real sketch because like I don't know if people think that just because you're not cis het, like maybe there's certain things you don't experience. Maybe it's toxic on this side too, and there was
Yeah.
a lot of toxicity to wade through. I had a chick
Mm-hmm.
tell me a switch is a I don't know if people get into BDSM, but she like trying to basically be a dom, but you don't even know me. I'm like, what is up? Are y'all all right? Like, who does this?
Mm,
Don't make me check you. But it was just like, yeah, it's battery acid. But sometimes you can wade through it and find something and someone worth having and someone worth knowing.
that's fantastic. That's the best case scenario and probably the best story I've ever heard of anyone on a dating app. That's fantastic, and I'm so happy for you. Let me see. I wanted to pull up this video and ask you, what are we seeing here? What is going on here? So here we have Scott Galloway, of course.
Mm-hmm. I
Uh,
was just about to say, I was like, I see that guy. I see he's everywhere.
he has a lot to say about a lot of things. So let's
Yes.
let's hear what he has to say about this man on Tinder. All right. So, what are we seeing here? Do we believe what he's saying? Do we believe his stats? All the women are
Well,
going for one guy?
well, what they're saying, what he's saying, because that's one of the things I think can that dating apps can really skew things for people,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you are so much more than like how you describe yourself in a photograph,
Right.
right? Because I mean, I know a lot of guys, guy friends that I have who absolutely bomb on dating apps. They just do not get any kind of hits, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in real life situations, in social situations, like, people find them they have way more luck that way,
Thank God for that.
right? And so, because, again, right? Like, I think, and this is something that, like, everyone has different, I guess, icks
Mm-hmm.
too, right? So I'm very big on, like, if I don't like your voice, if your voice really bothers me, I don't even think we can be really close friends. Like, I am a huge voice person,
Mm-hmm.
right? And sometimes I can pick that up on the phone, but it's something that I really have to pick up in person,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, like, a lot of times, dating apps, like, meeting people on dating apps, again, like, these are all tools, right? And every single tool has an upside, every single tool has a downside, and then, all the confounding factors of, how you're using it and how you're going about it, which increases your or decreases your chance of success. But, I've never, that's part of the reason why, like, I don't think I invest a lot of interest in apps. I've always just, I mean, I also don't like dating strangers, so that's another thing. Like, I'm not someone that meets someone, and that's what I figured out about, like, why apps don't work for me, is because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not someone that, and this just may be particular to me, but I'm not someone that's really attracted to people quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like,
Right.
if somebody's physically attractive, I'm like, oh, like, my level of attraction is similar to, like, looking at a really nice painting, right?
I
But
understand that completely.
right, but I'm not one of those people. Like, I've probably met maybe two people in my life where, like, I felt attracted to immediately, and neither one were, like, good matches, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, immediate attraction isn't attractive to me anymore, you know.
Hmm.
But too, also, like, some of my best relationships weren't people that I immediately had this, like, oh, I'm so attracted to you. Like, I wasn't repulsed by them or anything, but it was just kind of like this very natural development of interest over time.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that the apps don't work for. They need to have more time and space to sell themselves, or well, quote unquote sell
Or
themselves,
just, or
or
just even, yeah, just even get to know, right? Like,
yeah,
know each other in kind of like a less um pressured or, expected conditions.
true. Angela, what were your thoughts on the lovely Mr. Scott Galloway and what he had to say?
I think, and because I've seen that clip before, a lot of folks in the chat were saying that they weren't able to hear it.
I
Um,
don't know what to do about
I
that.
know, yeah,
I'm
but
freaking out now because we
yeah,
have more
I was,
videos.
yeah, I was reading. I was familiar with that particular clip, and the thing that came across to me more than anything is the sense of entitlement, which
Mm-hmm.
it's something that when I actually, Lord Jesus, dated male people, um, I came across a lot, was this sense of entitlement that I am here and I expect you to, I just expect women to fall all over me, and you need to be this and you need to be that, and why aren't you fall? It's like the thing that I always think about when I see things like that is like, maybe you would get more hits if you had a personality that was worth
Hey.
somebody, um worth somebody meeting you. Maybe if
Mm-hmm.
you worked on your skills at talking to people like they're actually people, instead of someone you need to be giving dictates and mandates to. Maybe if you did that, you might come across somebody that you would want to have, that would be interested in meeting with you and talking to you. The entitlement was real. And that is the thing that I usually like watching that clip. That's the first thing that pops into my mind is like, you expect people to fall all over you, but you have not done anything as far as the work of self-development, self-awareness, emotional intelligence. Like, nobody wants to deal with somebody like this idea of, and I think it reflects on one of the questions that you sent us, is like real dumb dating advice that was online. Like, don't send your representative. Who are you really? And if
Right.
you have an issue of vulnerability, most of us do. So like, own that and be like, I'm, yeah, that part too, Jeremy. But be willing to be, yeah, ain't nobody finna smash you the minute they meet you, you weirdos. But it's just, be vulnerable. You can't be afraid to do that. But of course, living in the place that we live under, the systems that we live under, that kind of rugged individualism, and this idea that a partner should be servile or somehow less than you, is something that is really that I've seen pervasive in the cesspool that is the dating market. And yeah, no.
Yeah. One of the things that I find interesting in that video is that Scott refers to women as coffees. He says the coffees will ghost you.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Why do you have to you dehumanize people, and then you expect somebody to be like, because if you're doing that talking about folks, then what do you do when you're actually talking to someone? That nasty energy, if this is how you think, that comes out. People pick up on that in real time, in real space. You might get away with it to a degree online, but when you're actually in front of someone and this is the way that you think, if this is the way the way that ass, if this is the way that you feel, that's going to come, that energy is going to translate into how it's going to come across and how you're dealing with whoever's sitting across or near you. They're going to pick up on that and they're going to ghost you, and they should, because it's a giant red flag.
One of the things that I've come across in hearing women talk about being on the apps is that men, and apparently like the man in that video, they just swipe on anything. They don't read bios. They might not even look at the picture. It's just like straight numbers game for them. So I think that's definitely one of the things that guy was doing wrong. Some people did some digging and they went to find out, well, why did he get these results? And some of the pictures that he had in his profile, he's holding like dead fish, I guess fish that he caught. And some men say, well, those are the only pictures where we're smiling. So yeah, I'm gonna hold up the gigantic fish that I caught, and I'm proud of it, and I'm gonna put that in my profile.
What does this say about you? And I think we need, and I know people will dismiss it like it's not that deep. It kind of is. What does it say that the only time you're smiling is when you have something dead on your line? Like, holding something dead is the one time you feel accomplished is that you've killed something.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Apparently, he was also wearing some T-shirt with like the picture of the mud flap girl, and it's some acronym about like sitting on his face or something. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Well, let's talk a little bit about labor. How are dating apps exploiting attention and engagement as unpaid labor? Did you feel
I mean,
used when you were on the apps? Ikoi?
I don't think I ever felt used, because again, like I think the amount of, like, if you're approaching, I think, dating in general, and especially apps, with kind of like this, like, I must find a relationship as soon as possible, kind of thing, approach to it, then I think you end up being on the losing end of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, because they are they are kind of, looking for people who, you know, use the apps, right?
Hmm.
And to a certain degree, like there is, I mean, you can kind of go into like a whole huge host of like psychological factors around apps, right? Um, and how that impacts people. But one of the major things of like, is of like the labor aspect of it is and how it impacts people because that was one of the things that like when working as a drug counselor, right?
Hmm.
A lot of people would talk about their relationships and how they went about their relationships. And for a lot of people, and it's funny, right? Because like, you would think that like the most people that are, very desperate to get into relationships, like I must get into a relationship as soon as possible. I absolutely despise being single type of approach. Like oftentimes those are the people who use relationships as distractions,
Hmm.
right? Of oftentimes they don't want a relationship because they want people. They want a relationship because they're running away from something. Right? It's
Fair.
a coping mechanism. And so if you kind of have that approach to it, you often kind of become binge users, and I think that's kind of what they're counting on, right? Um, in a lot of ways of doing, being really, really active on and I think also, if you're heterosexual, like, because there's a huge difference, I think, to a degree between like, being on like Bumble or Hinge for women versus like, other like Grinder, right? Or like, as Angela said, hers. I think certain demographics also have their certain patterns that are more
Hmm.
prevalent, but ultimately the huge part of the whole point of apps isn't necessarily to find new people, right? The just like technology and platforms kind of have their own agenda a little bit and in how they want you to use it. Every single app is kind of, has this thing of like there is an ideal of like how they want you to use it and how they're going to try to steer you to use it in a way that they want rather than for you.
Very true. Very true. Angela?
Let me backtrack on what I said about the fish because I think Red Dogger is like, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm thinking, I'm thinking of it in the context of the person that was holding that particular fish up, and also of a lot of people who do that. Yes, I know catch and release is a thing, but it's a whole lot of people that take a lot of pride in this colony about showing off the dead things that they killed. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where that came from. Like we live, and that's a whole nother discussion, in a thanatocracy. This is a government that thrives off of death and exploitation. Let's be clear about that. And so I think it
Mm-hmm.
reflects in the things that people enjoy. Okay, like everybody in my family fishes. I get it. But they don't all, that's not your profile pic if you're dating. So that's all I'm saying. Um but yeah, that's where I was going. But um and I got way off target. Where were we going?
When you were on the dating apps, did you feel used in any way? Like you were doing labor for the apps, generating money for them? Did you pay?
No. I no. No. Again, I'm Gen X. Who does that? Like back in the day, we called that tricking. Like you
Oh, oh, that's a bar.
like seriously, I'm not finna like you don't we not tricking to find people. Like you don't have to do that. It's one thing if you have the means and you find somebody and you want to do like this extravagant date, but paying this app to help you find people, I find that like irritating. I find it insulting. Um
Mm,
because the reason that people are so isolated in the first place is something that is capitalist. Like I think the rise of it. My wife and I talk about this all the time. You didn't see, like, I think the rise of the boom of using dating apps and the rise of people having AI relationships or whatever that is a direct result of the disaster capitalism of COVID. And
Hmm.
where people were forcibly isolated because for your own health and for
Hmm.
the health of people around you. And I think that we are trying to people are trying to establish connection, and I think capitalists were able to zoom in on that. Like, okay, we got this, this app for you that's gonna help you do all of these things. But as far as the labor aspect, the first thing that popped into my head back when I was on Jesus Christ Bumble, Lord, um, why? I should have known. I should have known when the individual had Mr. before his name in his profile. I should have known it was going to be a problem, that this
Okay.
person was just going to be jacked up. And you talking about, the labor of trying to put yourself out there, the labor of, you know, do the apps use us? Of course, because if they don't make money if we don't use it.
Right.
The more you use it, the more money you generate for them, whether you're actively paying for things or not. And oh no, I know he is going off. My wife, our cat Ricky in
Yeah,
the back acting a whole fool. Please, y'all excuse him.
that's okay.
Um,
It's better than my trains in the background and the sirens.
Turmeric is being a whole ass right now. But like, we're generating money for them whether we intend to or not, whatever platform you use, and whether you pay into it or not. So there's that. And also the labor that's expected of you once you, of, like somebody mentioned, selling themselves, of having to present this way. Nah, I live in an RV. Um, Having to present yourself a certain way, having to, you know, the labor of putting yourself out there. Like somebody else was saying, it's
Hmm.
exhaustion. It is exhausting.
Hmm.
It is exhausting. And for what? For what? Like, it at the end of the day, what are we doing all of this for?
It's for the chance of meeting the love of your life. I mean, I think everybody's doing a little gambling out there. It's for the chance that maybe you'll end up like Angela and you'll win. And
Hmm.
for some people, that's worth it. That's worth paying the money also into these apps. Yeah. People pay for photo shoots for apps. Yeah, for their bios and their profile pictures and stuff. I think they also pay for bios. Also, I've seen some terrible bios. So, hey, maybe you should pay for that. I don't know. I don't know. But see, it's also like a whole economy around it. There's money to be made in loneliness. Yeah.
Oh, there's
Hmm. Go
oh,
ahead.
there is definite money to be made in loneliness. But one of the things I think also, like, kind of circling back to Scott Galloway's track that you showed, right, is for, to a certain degree, like, obviously, men have always been marketed to in terms of sports and other things, right?
Hmm.
you know but in general, I think, women kind of grew up with more of a sense of, like, we need to appeal to men more than, like, men growing up with a sense of, like, they need to appeal more to women
Hmm.
in terms of socialization, right? And I think that kind of differentiation, and also, like, different expectations, since if we're talking like just het dating, right, that can
Hmm.
really skew things for a lot of people, because, like, Angela was saying, like, this thing of just like, oh my god, like, this guy's holding a dead fish and kind of like wearing a sketchy t-shirt, right? That's very typical of somebody that, like, to a certain degree, have never really had to, like, sit and think about how they come across,
Hmm.
right? You know, that because, you know, a lot of times, right, you know, people that lack self-awareness, you know, one of the key things is that like they assume that they're the normative.
Is that what they're doing? 'Cause- okay, okay. Angela says yes too. Say
I
more.
would, yeah, I would absolutely agree with that because they don't. And I mean, your point is perfect, Ikoi. Like they don't have. These are people that don't. I am the default,
Yeah,
so
Mm.
I don't have to worry about whether I look grimy, sweaty, scaly, whatever on my profile pic. Because I am the default. I only have to show up as you know my grimy self, and you're just supposed to be okay with it, and it translates perfectly into like somebody like the dude in the clip. Like, I'm not supposed to do anything to myself. You're supposed to make yourself appealing to me and give me a reason to want to be around you. I don't have to do that. I'm what you're here for, aren't I?
Mm.
And I think that, like Ikoi was saying, that points perfectly to the way that uh men are socialized in this culture. I don't have to do anything. Like I can be a scaly, funky, ashy, dusty, ignorant, boring, because I could give you a whole litany on Lord have mercy my dating experiences with that. But I don't have to have a personality at all. I don't have to cultivate any interests. And it's okay because I am what you're here for. And hey, you better take what you can get. And I have all of this range of women that I can pick from, and you need to be this, you need to be that to be appealing to me, but I don't have to do anything.
But he has a good job. He works 8 hours a day. He doesn't cheat and he doesn't beat. He's a good man, Savannah.
The bar is in hell. Bar. I wake up every day grateful that God has made me queer every day, because I promise you, if all and this is not a slap at men, this is the way they're socialized under the culture that we live under. And in
Mhm.
fact, the mash of cultures. But when you talk about capitalism, you are talking about patriarchy as well, and the things that come with that. And so it's not a personal slap at men. But if I had to only, that was the only choice available to me, I would be a nun.
Wow. That
you
was
know what? You know, as somebody that has tried dating women as well, right? Because I went through a phase where I was just like, okay, like I tried dating men, it's not working. I tried dating women, and that also didn't work for different reasons. But it was, you know, but yeah, like there is a certain tragedy to, I think, being heterosexual that
they
that
call it
I think.
hetero fatalism or hetero pessimism, where women are sort of bemoaning being straight, having to have romantic sexual partners that are male and wishing they could do something about that. Also, the birth
Right,
rates are plummeting. So there's that.
right. Well, and it's also like, you know, because now you're actually starting to see more about like lavender marriages. Um,
Yes.
right, you know, and like I've known people who have had very successful lavender marriages, um, from way back, right? That wasn't for like, you know, necessarily beard purposes, but you know, a different framing of like. So one of a couple that I used to know, she is a straight woman. Her husband is a gay man. They've been married at this point for like over 20 years, right? And they were best friends in college, right? And you know, I had no idea they were married. It was just like something that just came up, and I was like, "Oh my god, you're married!" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I know it's really, really weird." And this was the husband speaking, but he was just like, you know, for me, like marriage is about like, do I trust someone with my life? Do I trust their decision making? right? If I'm incapacitated, right, who am I going to trust to run things for me,
It's also who
right?
your
Whether
doctors are going to trust to run things for you.
right, right, make these like life or death decisions, right? Like, if I'm in the hospital, like, would I be comfortable with this person having access to, my bank account, and any documentation of it, you know what I mean? And so he was like, that's not necessarily as a gay man. He was like, that's probably never going to be another man I'm fucking. That's going to be my best friend.
Oh, well, we have more than one question in the chat. Can you please define a lavender marriage?
A lavender marriage is a marriage between one person that's straight and one person that is gay, right? And I would think like lavender marriages can go either way, but the most common lavender marriages talked about on the internet and online is specific to straight women with a gay man.
Mm-hmm.
I would have one. I would totally have one.
Do
Like
you
they
think
had
they're
a
going to be on
great
the
marriage,
rise? Yeah.
huh?
Do you think they're going to
Yeah.
be on the rise?
I think again, right? Like it worked for them because one, like he still dated. He was still like a very gay man, and was dating men. And she also, had the option, right, of
Mm-hmm.
like dating men since she was straight, and she would occasionally date men as well. So their relationship was not one where they were having sex with each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was never the situation between them. It was he was just like, yeah, like, we're she had been married and divorced before, that he was like, yeah, like we've been, this is you're someone I trust with my life and I would rather get married to you. What do you think? And she was like, thought about it. She's like, yeah, you're kind of right. So every lavender marriage is going to be different because some of the ones I've seen is just like gay man and straight women where like the man kind of like finally accepts that he's gay, right? But that because they have children and everything, like they've figured out a way to like stay together because they still love each other as people, right? So there's various scenarios to lavender marriage that one of the things about, is should marriage be about, somebody that you quote unquote romantically love,
There we go. I mean, I
right?
think that's very well said, and probably yeah, a lot of people will start considering that as well. I think one of the things that people are starting to see now is what marriage looks like, at least on social media, and for a lot of people, what they're seeing is not so great. One of the things that's happening is a lot of these relationships seem to be breaking down along labor lines, who's doing what in the home and who's not doing what in the home. So we're going to try this again. And you guys let me know if you can hear this. I changed some of the settings a bit. Let's go.
Oh, can't hear it. Oh, wait.
Can hear it?
I can't hear it.
Oh, what
It's
is going on? Oh, this is so not what I had planned. This is so not what I had planned.
It
Maybe
happens, darling. It happens.
it does. It's not supposed to happen to me and not today.
Fair
But
enough.
let me see if I can try this again with another window. Let's close out of this. Um, can you hear this?
I can't hear anything.
It's literally playing right now, and you can't hear. You can't even hear it like from the speaker from my computer. Not
Well, do
good.
you want to read out the captions while you play it?
Let's see if I can do that. So this is Page Turner, She's a mother of four. And one of the things she talks about is something called the mental load. Have you ever heard of that, the mental load? Well, I don't know if the screen is even big enough for me to read what she's saying, but I'll give you the visual of her talking, and I'll explain what she's saying. So she's talking about something called the mental load, which is when usually the wife is the person responsible for remembering everything that's going on. So she tells this story about how she's gone to some book fair for kids, and the parents are there, I guess, to be like chaperones. So she's talking to one of the dads that are there, and she's like, "Oh, it's really great. Dads are so involved these days." And the dad is asking her all these questions, and he's like, "So, how does my kid pay for the book?" And she's like, "Well, either they have cash or a card or this kind of e-wallet thing." And he's like, "Oh, okay. How do I know what my kid has?" She's like, "Well, we'll see. Maybe the kid will tell us, or he'll just pay, and you'll find out then." So as it turns out, as she's telling the story, it's the wife that set up the kid completely, and it's just the father that's showing up to this book club. So he actually looks like a really great dad, but he didn't take on any of the mental load to prepare the child or even himself for this event. And so the mental load is, not just about kids, but it's also about stuff in the house and who is going to do the grocery shopping. Do you remember that we're out of this? Do you remember that this is the brand that we usually get? What are we going to have tonight? How are we going to spread that out over the week? Anything that involves just sort of something intangible that helps the house run, which is also, I guess, something that becomes invisible to a lot of people and to a lot of partners. So they may not acknowledge that you're taking on the mental load, but that is what is keeping the relationship and the household running. Have you guys ever heard of the mental load?
Hmm.
I have, but I never heard it called that.
Mhm. It's
But yeah,
gaining popularity online.
hmm yeah,
Uh,
the
mhm.
concept absolutely. I just never heard that uh, that it was called that.
Yeah, recently I saw a video of a guy saying, you know, sometimes my wife just comes over and tells me to sign a card. I didn't know that, we bought your kid a bike. I didn't know that we even remembered his birthday. Uh, you got fellas, you should get yourself a wife. So the wife is doing all of this work of maintaining the relationships for him, not just herself and for them as a couple, but for him. He's getting this goodwill as well. But he's not remembering anyone's birthday or anyone's kids' ages or buying any of the gifts. He just signs the card. So there's all kinds of, yeah. It's also emotional labor. I think emotional labor is more dealing with someone else's feelings. The mental
Right.
load, I think, is more cerebral. It's more planning. It's more arranging things, setting things up.
Right. It's kind of like the organization of life,
Right.
right? What you have to do in terms of organization of life, and to a certain degree, right?
Hmm.
I think this is, I mean, as while I am somebody that unfortunately dates men, I absolutely adore men, right? Like some of my very best friends are men. And, I know I sound like one of those people right now, right? Um, but, but I always think, right? And also, as someone, in my counseling line of work, my clients were predominantly male. They were also predominantly gay, but I had some straight ones as well. Um, and so I've worked with a lot of men in my life, right? And again, like this is how I think patriarchy really shortchanges people, because these are like so much about behavior is erroneously put onto like gender differences. Like, well, I'm a guy, or she's a girl. Like, they're naturally supposed to do things, right? And the whole manosphere is kind of like really capitalizing on like, this we're different polarities, the masculine, the feminine, whatever.
Mhm.
But no, like, it's one of those things where ultimately when people are talking about mental load, right? Those are just basic life skills, that a lot of people lack, right? So when, so many men, because I know like a huge host, like there are people, not necessarily my closest friends, but I know like plenty of people who are like really extraordinarily lonely people, right? And these are people I come across and like, see when I'm out and about, and I know their story. And, as I get to know them over time, it's just like, they're not terrible people. So these aren't people that are necessarily lonely because, they're untenable, like, sexist, horrible men per se. But you lack some really necessary skills, is kind of like the conclusion that I come to a lot of times, right? Of whether like, it's, appealing to people or being an engaging conversationalist, or, or like I said, some of like the big, planning things, because you can't see oftentimes like you can't even maintain friendships unless you actually work at it.
Very true.
Right? Because, one of the things about the huge, I'm also Gen X, like Angela, and one of the huge differences that, I see as, somebody, that's been an adult for a while, and, looking at like some of our parents and previous generations is, the fact that, not just romantic, but friendship maintenance has become like its own labor, right? Because you actually have to work at it in a way that, like, before people went to churches and like they went out more because they had more disposable income, right? Like people were much more casual about like phone calls and just like dropping by people's homes. And those things have kind of like withered away. I mean, now, like, most of the time, like if you drop by unannounced at someone's home because you're in the neighborhood, a lot of people will think that's extremely rude or violates a boundary here, creepy even, right? And that was something that was a lot more common. And what that made is kind of like maintenance of social connections and also like meeting a potential partner just much easier.
Very true.
Right? Now you work so much, 9 to 5, long commute. And then with working condition degradation, right? You literally don't necessarily have like the mental or emotional capacity once you're done with work to then actually go out, right? And either seek people or maintain the connections that you have. Because it's another thing is just like, there's all these memes online about like, like with Brad Pitt or whatever actor, two actors usually like waving to each other, right? Smiling, and, the blurb is always just like something to the effect of like, adult friendships, where like, I'll see you next year, right? Or in 6 months, you know? And that is one of the things is just, in terms of social connections in general, that's kind of like the level where, because so many people, are no longer like COVID had an impact, but people are so exhausted from work that going out after work or like actually making time to go out after work, is a daunting thing. And not just the daunting thing, but if you're already exhausted, right, then you literally don't have the capacity to say, maintain like, because not all relationships, any kind of human relationships, some of the best ones aren't necessarily easy ones.
True.
right? You know, but if you're already tired, you literally no longer have the capacity to, you know, for the necessary, I think, challenges of a more profound but difficult relationship, right? And that makes all relationships and all social uh, connections so transactional, not just because we live in, well, because we live in such a capitalistic society that exploits so much out of everyone, right? You know,
Very
that
much.
you also, yeah, so, you know, that you no longer have, because, you know, we're not necessarily just facing a dating crisis, but if you look at a lot of numbers, you know, a lot of, we don't have the kind of community and friendship connection as well, right?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
You know, and then also like we become much more physically mobile. And in fact, some of the more demanding careers, you know, are careers that expect you to move to wherever to, you know, chase the better opportunities, right? So you can't necessarily really expect to stay in one area and build roots a lot of times, you know, because I mean, all my friends that work in certain sectors like tech, right? Like a lot of them have moved a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Academia, a lot of people move a lot. You know, and even just rent, right? I mean, I know so many people, like where I live, I'm in the outskirts of San Diego, and the place that I used to live in is you know, it's a very rural town where it was basically like, you know, I don't think I've rarely seen other Asians. It's basically like, you know, Hispanic or white, right? And that was kind of like the makeup of this area for, or visually for a while. And like over, you know, the last decade, right? I'm seeing a lot more different ethnicities because, you know, San Diego is a big city. We do have, you know, a multitude of people from around the world here for obvious reasons, right? But they were very much kind of like in the city and not less in the outskirts of the city, right? Especially some of the more rural areas that I'm in. And I'm seeing a lot more now, and I'll talk to them, and they're still working in San Diego. They've just been priced out of it, right? So, you know, people are moving 40, 50, 60 miles away from, you know, their workplace to chase cheaper rent, right? And then like the commute and the extra gas money, because oftentimes, right, like, you know, things may still kind of come out cheaper on like a strictly budgetary sense. But, you know, you put in gas, you put in like the commute, you put in the time you put in the commute, and then it's just like, you know, it oftentimes you're saving money, but you're going to be more physically exhausted.
You're also far away from, your friends and family where you moved
Yeah,
from.
well, and that's the thing, right? You know, because obviously if you're like, you know, moving across state, you know, to chase a career, then it's one thing, but it's incredible how much even like a 20, 30 mile distance for most people is in terms of being able to maintain relationships, right? And friendships, you know, because I live in middle butt nowhere, I usually go down to like San Diego to see my friends, you know. And if I wasn't willing to drive to San Diego to see my friends, you know, I would probably see very few people
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
if I'm being very real, because, you know, I mean, for them, right? You know, it's like we live in the city. There's a lot more here, more to do here, you know, and like, you know, driving 45 minutes to, you know, where you are is, you know, I mean, for a lot of people that they just don't do that.
Agree. Angela, would you like to jump in?
I've been a lot of folks in the chat are making some really amazing points, and I think also to your point too, Ikai, like people having to be in different places. I think Bay Planner just said it perfectly. Like you have to sacrifice. There's this expectation that you have to sacrifice your personal life in order to simply like exist under capitalism. You're not supposed to have a relationship that matters to you. Yeah, saving money by dissolving your personal life. Like, and that's something my wife and I have, like, we're dealing with that now
Mm-hmm.
because the job economy, the job situation across this colony is in the toilet, and that's being kind. Um, and it's hard on people, and I think a lot of what we have to, and it's hard when you're trying to survive, you're trying to maintain not only your romantic relationships if you have them, but your platonic ones as well, because our friendships matter. Community matters. I never thought I would say that. I used to think of myself, if you can believe it, as an
Mm-hmm.
island. I was self-sufficient. I didn't need anybody. I can do it myself. I'm good by myself. And no, no. I, at 52, have learned community is the only way we're going to make it. And that those communities need to be our blood family if they're available to us, chosen family, those we are in organization with, and romantic relationships. Like one thing I love about my wife is she is as community minded as I am. I don't have to tell her that what's going on in Cuba matters. I don't have to tell her about Iran mattering. I don't have to tell her about Palestine mattering. She already knows that. Like we're on the same page with that. And that's so hard to find because people are so in boxes because they're blinkered by I have to make it through every day to day. And I think going back to what we exactly making the time, and it just seems like one more thing to be exhausted by. But I also think that first off, reframing this and understanding that this is how capitalism works on us,
Mm-hmm.
that we are supposed to be exhausted. We are supposed to be isolated. We are supposed to feel powerless. We are supposed to feel alone. That is how it works. We are supposed to view work as life. All we are here to do is produce. We are not here to enjoy and receive beauty. We are not here to create beauty. We are not here to foster these beautiful relationships with one another. We are not here to build, as somebody in the chat said, third spaces. We're not here to do any of those things under capitalism because it is designed to kill us, to extract as much from us as it can, and to kill us. And I think if you understand that this is how capitalism works, I think it might help people prize their relationships more because especially if you're a revolutionary mindset, because doing things that are centered in love and community is the exact opposite of this anti-love economy. This is not a place that knows anything about loving, even though it gives a lot of lip service to that. And so when you choose to prioritize your communities, you choose to prioritize your relationships, you choose to do the work on yourself, to make yourself the type of person that when we're going back to thinking about talking about labor, to not be the one forcing the people you're in relationship with to do all the heavy lifting, to be self-aware enough to do your own heavy lifting, because that not only builds the relationship that you have with it, whether that's a romantic partner or a platonic partner, but it also makes you a better community member. You are carrying your own weight. You are being
Mm-hmm.
emotionally intelligent. You are being self-aware enough to know how much space you're taking up and who else might be impeded by the space that you're taking. You're aware enough to know how you need to move in spaces that are shared. So I think the when we look at the things that make us better human beings for ourselves, I think it's fractal. Better human beings within ourselves, because as my wife will tell you, that everything starts with the self. When you make yourself do the work that you Yes, forgiveness is definitely important, but I think like folks also have to, who are you forgiving, and have they asked you for it? Because I think we like to offer forgiveness to people who have not shown that they give a damn whether they've harmed you or not. And I think we don't need to do that. You need to come to folks and say, you've caused harm, and be aware of that, and then be open to the opportunity for forgiveness. I think that's another discussion. But I also think that, like I was saying, it's fractal. It starts with the self. When you become you're working on being a better person. That translates to your intimate relationships. That translates to your community relationships. And then we build the types of communities that we want, because people are all, you're working on that. So, um, I think that when we're talking about labor, I think we're talking about the things that come under patriarchy in this culture,
Mm-hmm.
that people who are coded feminine, however that takes. That's not something that's dictated specifically by, the equipment you were born with.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a spectrum that a lot of folks like to ignore. But whatever you equipment you were born with, you may fall onto a more, what is understood as a more feminine side of the scale. And as that, you are expected to do a certain amount of emotional and emotional labor when you are in community and in relationships, because it's not just romantic relationships where we see that. We also see that in organizations.
Mm-hmm.
I have had to check, I don't know how many scrotes in
Oh.
organizations that I have been involved with, because it's like, sweetie, don't get it confused. Just because I was born with a uterus does not mean my back is here for you to walk on. Do your own damn work. If we're doing a group project, that means you be part of the group. You do the labor too. And it gets exhausting. But like, it's like I'm saying, it's like, it starts with the self. And I think that we build better communities when we are self-aware, and self-awareness includes, if you're in relationship with others, whether that is romantic, platonic, or both, you have to be aware of the labor that you are expending versus what you are demanding. And I promise you, my wife does not let me lean on her and not do, like, I can check. If I'm not pulling my weight in the relationship, and have to be reminded every now and again that my wife is my partner. She is not my subordinate.
Right. Or your
That,
mother.
believe that. Like, she don't play that. So, like, Ty will tell you, no, that's not how we do things here. And so it's just a reminder of, because my first marriage, I did do all of that. I was the heavy lifter in the relationship. I was the person that balanced the checkbooks. I was the person that did all of that. Like, move out of my way and let me take care of everything. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't do that now. But and having had to learn to be a partner instead of, you know, a mother superior, and they're cracking the whip like, this is how we need to get things done. Everybody needs to follow line. And to be a partner um with somebody also who is very self-aware and very, very cognizant of how to direct their life, and having to make sure that this is an equal partnership at all times. Like, it reflects what everybody in the chat is saying too. You have to, everybody but Earth Homie, somebody give him a hug.
Ah, for real.
Polar lamb, bless your heart. But making sure that weight is balanced, and that we are giving and receiving and being open to each other, but also being aware of the space that we take up, so that the people we're in relationship with are not doing all of this heavy labor themselves.
Do you think this culture is too focused on romantic relationships as opposed to friendships or comradeships? Anything else?
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Oh,
Hell
yeah.
yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what do you read for leftists? Do you think that leftists reflect that as well? And should we be reflecting romantic relationships over other relationships?
I
I
mean, I
think.
think it.
Go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I think a lot of times we make these like we. This is a society that likes to put everything in a hierarchy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And one of the things is like, I mean, and again, I'm just speaking for myself, but if I had to pick between, you know, having and maintaining my very best friends and my close friend circle that I have now, right? Or that I give that up for a relationship, I would maintain my friends. Like there would be absolutely no question. Because for me personally, like I can live without a like a romantic relationship, but I can't, live without my community and my close friends,
Mm. Hey, you make a
right?
great point.
Because like for me, friendship is the foundation of life, where because if you don't have the ability to be a good friend, you're also never going to be a good romantic partner, right? I think because you do see people who don't necessarily have good skills to maintain friendship, get into relationships, but they're oftentimes not very happy, right? So I do think, like, rather than this hierarchy of like romance being like at the top of the pyramid and then like everything else being submissive to romance, I, kind of like to think of it more in an upended way where, like, friendship is the foundation that everything good comes out of, right? A skill of being a good friend is required in being a good partner. It's required in being a good community member, right? It's required in, like, getting along with other people. You know what I mean? It's kind of like it's the first and most important skill to have, and I think we kind of look at the importance of relationships rather also than, like, our ability and capacity for, because love is an action, right? To a
Mm-hmm.
certain degree, it's not just a feeling, it's an action. Like, do you have these skills? Because these are skills that you do have to develop. They're not taught in school. A lot of families teach them very badly or even flat out wrongly, right? That's like the whole manosphere. When I look at them, I'm just like, oh man, like these are people that never really picked up really good social skills in some way.
Mm. That's fact. Do you think that's part of the origin of the red pill? Just a bunch of
Well,
people with poor social skills?
I mean, it's what, and again, like that's kind of one of the things about like male socialization sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And growing up, like, I tended towards tomboy, so like, my friend group skewed very much towards the male on the spectrum growing up when I was little. And one of the things that I like realized was, to a certain degree, like, both genders have different kind of, the way they deal with different hierarchy in general. But, one of the things about, like, you know, male friendships is that the difference between, like, boys growing up and socializing, girls growing up and socializing, at least in our culture, is that there is a lot less requirement for any kind of emotional attunement in male friendships, versus like emotional attunement to each other being kind of like the glue of a lot of like women's friendships, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't learn how to emotionally attune to people, ultimately though, because that's also one of the reasons why, like, men end up really lonely,
They
right?
didn't
Like,
love each other.
yeah, well, because I mean, I remember like there were these two guys I knew that were good friends of mine way back when. And they had literally grown up, like their moms were best friends. They lived in the same neighborhood. Like they had been best friends. They're basically brothers from another mother since they were both in diapers, right? But like whenever like one of them would have like some kind of like relationship issues with their girlfriend or whatever, like they would call me and I'm just like, you met me a year ago. Why aren't you talking to your best friend? And like I guess that was the first time that anyone had ever posed him the question. And he paused, he's just like, oh yeah, like I mean, I trust him with my life, but I guess we just don't talk about these things very much with each other. It's not like we don't talk about it at all, but it's kind of very cursory.
I mean, I think that's absolutely true. Years ago, a friend of mine told this joke about two guys meeting each other and they're talking about toothpaste. Oh my God, you like Colgate? I like Colgate too. Do you want to be the best man at my wedding?
Mm-hmm.
Which, it's sad. It is. But this is how a lot of people are conducting their relationships these days.
Well, and I think the stress of because that's one other thing about like capitalism, at least in the United States, and how it's impacted the school system, right? So
Hmm.
like a real metrics heavy, testing heavy school system. So
Hmm.
kids are, because one of the things, I mean, I was probably one of the last generation of children who, a lot of schools still had art programs, music programs as part of the requirement,
Hmm.
right? And so those programs to a certain degree, like for a lot of kids, it was like the bright spot where the fun, what that was part of like what made school fun, right? And to a certain degree, like exposure to the arts primes us for like learning the more difficult, dry subjects, right? And so I was one of the last kids who had that in our public school system, and now most public schools don't anymore, right? So kids aren't getting any kind of like creative outlet, which is like necessary to the human condition, right? And so you have kids that are too exhausted and kind of mentally burned out to really develop the skills for social connection, right? And like, things that like conflict resolution and how to maintain relationships, and then you add technology and apps and everything else on top of that because and one of the things that I do see sometimes in like, talking to younger kids is, some of them really do struggle with connecting to people, right? And that like we already have, capitalism that has made connections difficult, but I think we are kind of like reaching a whole level of disconnection due to
Hmm.
conditions
I
that
think
we haven't. Yeah.
hmm No, I think that's true, especially for I guess the kids who were in school during COVID, particularly the younger ones. It really did
Right.
a number on their education and their socialization.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's I think when the when you are younger, those kinds of pauses in make a profound difference.
True.
You
Angela,
know,
would you like to chime in? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I cut you off?
No,
Okay.
I
Go ahead.
agree with I agree with everything Ikoi is saying because like thinking about the way we were socialized and the things that these young people are not getting. And I think that again, we can tie that the ramping up of it. I think it was something that was already happening. Maybe it was slower. I think the pace of things just kind of the floodgates literally opened at COVID. Like we are talking about the fallout of disaster capitalism that
Mhm.
I think things got sped up. Like, this is a system that needs people to feel isolated, that needs to the pushing screens in classrooms and limiting actual human interaction and the actual human exchange of knowledge. That's by design. I think people, I think a lot of us are, because this society is what it is, the Puritans should have been, I'm gonna leave that alone. But they did no one, they did not do this society any favors, because we don't know how to relate to each other as human beings, and we've been taught to internalize under this system what the system does to us. Like, it's my fault that, you know, I don't know how to have a conversation with you, versus there are structures put in place so I don't know how to do that. That there is an active campaign to make sure that these kids do not know how to talk to other kids, that don't know how to go outside and literally touch grass, roll around in the dirt the way we did. Like, and we did. Like, they don't know how to do that, because there is a whole system making a whole lot of money on making sure that we are raising worker drones who are programmed from birth to look in a screen. That's all they know. Like, it's not personal, but it becomes personal because we don't know that it's not something that stems from us. So I think that one of the first things that we have to do is understand, thank you, Drea, like, we need empathy. Even though we live in a culture that says empathy is bad, empathy is wrong, we need to understand that, yeah, we got some shortcomings as people, but we also are some of the most heavily propagandized, heavily indoctrinated, and heavily having tech forced on us in all these insidious ways, more than anyone else in the world. And we need to understand, like, too many of us, we internalize what it is, things that are systemic. It's not us. And so, yes, you're going to have to work very hard on counteracting that. But I think the first thing is to know your enemy, to know what is being done to you, to being aware of that. Be aware of what is being marketed to you and why that might not be what you want. AI may have some great things. I don't mess with it. I don't need, and I think maybe that's part of being Gen X. I can't imagine telling my problems to Chat GPT and expecting an intelligent response. I have friends for that. And if it came down to it, I got a journal. I have a journal, and if I needed it, I know how to find a therapist, even though I ain't got no health insurance. But you know what I'm saying?
This is America.
Capitalism. So, I mean, like, this is by design. And the only way that we counteract this shit that is being forced on us is to A, understand that it's happening in the first place. B, understand the ways that it's insidious. It doesn't look like a bad thing until all of a sudden in your life, and now it's in your life, and now you have AI psychosis. To understand that, and also to learn the skills, not be afraid, which we talk about empathy and vulnerability. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable, to open yourself up to meeting people, even though it feels weird and awkward, and you might get your feelings hurt, or somebody might be unkind to you. Risk it anyway. Because one thing I've noticed is, like, this trend of looking back at the 90s with all this nostalgia. Oh, people were at clubs and being sweaty, and you know, we want to recreate that. First off, you can't go back. That's not the world we live in anymore. But what you can do is, what are those aspects Okay, one of those aspects.
Okay.
Okay, get it, Drea.
Quick thank you to Deprogrammer who gifted 5 This is Revolution podcast memberships.
Hey,
And to Drea for her generous contribution here. This one's for
yep.
the girls. Thank you.
Hey, we
Thank
love
you.
y'all. But like thinking rather than trying to recreate those experiences in the world of the sweaty 90s club will never exist again. To my detriment. I was one of them sweaty 90s people grinding on the dance floor and having a wonderful part of it. And my heart
Mhm.
is broken that does not exist anymore. That time does not exist anymore. We're not getting that back. What we can do is take the things that made that magical for us and how does that translate to the the reality that so many of us are living in now. How do we do that safely in a world where not only is COVID still running wild, but measles is too?
Mm.
How do we do those things? Um, so I think when we're talking about relationships, I think it's very important to understand that there are things that are being forced on us that are systemic. Know your enemy. Know what they're
Yeah.
doing. Know all the ways that the tentacles of this still like weasel into your life. Even if it looks small, analyze everything. Everything that you're being,
Yes.
anything that this culture tells you is relationship worthy,
Mhm.
that this is what you should want. Question all of it. And also open your heart back up. Open your heart and be willing to meet people. Be willing to be open. Be willing to have your feelings hurt. Those things grow you as a human being in a way that no machine can ever replicate. Um, I think we're fighting for the right to be human under
Yes.
this culture. We are
Mhm.
we are at a point, and I don't think that I'm being hyperbolic when I say it. We are fighting for our humanity,
Yes.
and if we are looking at the freedom struggles from Cuba to Palestine to Lebanon to Iran, they are showing us how to fight for your humanity. And I think people here, as over indoctrinated and as over propagandized as we are, I think people are waking up and we're going to have to make a more concerted effort to be awake because we are also fighting for our humanity.
Very, very well said. We do have a question in the chat. Maybe we can get to this really quickly and then get into the questions I sent you guys. Andy Williams says, do you think that the proliferation of solely therapy based solutions is also a byproduct of atomization and the destruction of third spaces?
Yes. Well, since I'm in the field, I would definitely say yes. But there is also another thing that I think is often like gravely missed when people talk about like therapy, chat GPT therapy, right, or AI therapy is and all these things that are kind of coming together now is that like, a huge part of like the capitalist structure is the surveillance state, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest things about what, why, like, therapy has kind of become what it is that, like, to a certain degree, like, if you're having problems with somebody, right, it does often cause, like, maybe, conflict that becomes much harder to navigate if you share it with, like, a mutual party, right? Sometimes. Um, and so, therapy does kind of like remove that level of potential conflict by a third party that doesn't know like the other person that you're talking about, right? So, like, you don't have to deal with some of the fallouts and conflicts to that. So, regardless of capitalism per se, like, there is this thing of like a non involved, you know, third party with some kind of, training being like a useful thing for a lot of people, right? But one of the major things is that, like, we do live in a surveillance state. We do live in a condition where, like, we are expected to perform at all times, right? Whether that is in work or whether that is in life, whether it is in social media, like the whole rise of like, content creators and influencers and people who live stream their, lives like 8 hours a day and whatnot. Because when people say like, they miss the 90s, right? What a lot of people are saying is like, what was life like before, you had a permanent record of everything going on in your life. That's what they're saying. It's not necessarily like the dance floors or whatever, right? But that back in the 90s, you actually had to do some effort to create physical memories. You had to tote around the camera, right? A film camera, get that fucking like pay and get that film processed and then go pick up, I mean, it was effort to actually like create these physical memories that are now so instantaneous, right? Like, I mean, if you wanted to like record video, like those video cameras are fucking heavy back in the day. You couldn't just, it would have been like a real effort and labor to like carry it around and like film yourself all day, and expensive. So what we are missing in nostalgia, right, is the ability to be free. Because that is what the surveillance state is, right? It robs you of your freedom. It robs you from like spontaneity, because you're always like, oh, like this is going to be on record because I am somebody that loves to go dancing and still goes dancing. But like it's kind of funny because a lot of times I go to these nights and like the people that are dancing the most are like the older people, the Gen X people. Right. And then the younger people, if they're dancing, they're usually pretty inebriated. Right. But it's also one of those things where like, unless they're kind of like filming content where they're comfortable being filmed in that way, you will see like people kind of freeze when the cameras go up. Right. Mm-hmm. And this kind of like constant permanent record and surveillance state, because, we're seeing that right now with, I think, Memdani's wife, and maybe like some of the comments that she made when she was a teenager, right? And I'm not going to get into the details of that, but like probably a huge number of us would quote unquote be canceled by somebody's standards if like our thoughts and our lives were recorded like that from such a young age.
Yes.
Right. And so to a certain degree, how I'm going to tie this into the question of like therapy, right, is like this constant surveillance state has a tie in with therapy language becoming so dominant in our colloquial discussions, right, and discourse. And that is, because what is a surveillance state in some ways? The surveillance state, to a certain degree, is a kind of hypervigilance, right? It is constant looking, constant analyzing, right? And that is one of the ways of like, as somebody that works in the mental health field and as somebody that does actually kind of like, deploy these terms in conversations with people, there is a difference of like, because so many people like are so quick to diagnose people now. Right? Everyone's a fucking narcissist, right? And that, or like people will just like meet somebody and like think, oh, well, I met this person and I think she's borderline, or I think they're avoided, or, and it's just like, okay, like that's interesting. What are your reasons for saying this about somebody you just met? Right. And sometimes it's just like completely unfounded.
Yes.
A lot of times it's completely unfounded, or there's some like gross misunderstanding of the concept, because, some of the psychological concepts are, like with the term narcissism, right? a narcissist isn't, as a personality disorder, isn't just somebody that's selfish. There is a lot more that goes on into that, right?
Facts.
You know? So one of the ways of the surveillance state is that it turns us into surveillors of other people, right? That we become part of that surveillance state mentality by living in it. That's how it kind of bleeds to us by osmosis. Right. So isolation, because surveillance will make you, contributes deeply to isolation, right? It contributes deeply to social anxiety and so many other things, and so isolation necessitates therapy, right? But therapy is done under capitalist conditions, right? And very much under a capitalist framing majority of time,
True. Very
I
true.
mean, right? Because if just because all these modalities, all these therapies, right? That the way you deploy it, you can deploy those under very capital framing, right? That these are not a lot of times I'll even have therapists that say oh neutralities or modalities are neutral, you either deploy them well or not well, and it's well one of the standards of deploying them well under capitalism is to reinforce it, right? Because that's one of the things, that part of why I know so many people that fucking go to therapy and get worse. Get actually worse. I know three people where I'm just I really liked you a whole lot better before you went and got therapy, because instead of actually kind of trying to figure out their life, they became experts at surveilling and judging everybody else and
Bars.
labeling everybody else.
That's very true. A lot of people go to therapy and they learn therapy speak and they weaponize it against other people, diagnose other people. Shame.
Right? When therapy should ultimately be more about discovering yourself, right? And how you
Hmm.
function and how you work, right? Because that's also one of the things about so many of our human relationships are expectation based, right? And that's expectation based on, the individual, what the individual wants and expectation to other people, versus being a lot more process based and just kind of because that's one of the things of what makes dating and friendship and opening yourself up to high stakes, becomes high stakes, right? Is not, just necessarily that people are afraid of being vulnerable, right? But it's also one of those things where people kind of put such huge mental pressure on the outcome, and a very specific outcome, rather than this approach of I am a faulty human, we are all faulty humans, but we're also interesting and fascinating and different, and I just want to get to know you. Right? We don't have this approach because we live in an extractive society, right? That's what an outcome-based society is. It's extractive, it's exploitative, right? So you walk into any kind of a human situation and have this thing of I have a very specific outcome I'm looking for, right? That removes vulnerability in itself.
Hmm.
Right? A huge part of just being able to be open and meet people is to let go of some of those expectations and be I am curious about you. I want to get to know you. Because a huge aspect of I think what drives disappointment in friendships, disappointment, especially in dating, right, is that they were so outcome based that the curiosity went right out the window, right? But dating isn't a performance. It shouldn't be a performance if it is about connecting to people, right? Like if it is about getting to know, and one aspect of performance is that if you're performing, you can't be curious because you have a specific job to do. So people have kind of taken like this job and outcome and metric and performance based mentality into an arena of human connection that does not, like, that is literally corrosive. So we have, like, so many factors, that are kind of like coming in, but like the surveillance state is a huge aspect. And like, therapy speak being kind of like, it's the way a lot of people deploy, it's fucking gaslighting, right? you know, right? Like, because again, like, it's one of those things where like it makes you less open, less curious, less vulnerable, because it's also one of those things where like nobody wants to be with somebody that, looks at you and like with this kind of, idea of like, I know you more than you know yourself. Right? That's fucking hubris. Like, you may be able to observe things as an as an outsider that like the person may not be aware of, surely, right? But that's kind of what therapy speak does to people, is that it kind of gives people like too much unfounded confidence, right? And that unfounded confidence plays into like a performance base, right? It's almost self-sabotage of like walking in and being so confident in your ability to read people that most of the time, because very few people that deploy therapy walk in and point out positive things about people, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're always pointing out negative things about people. And if you are always looking for negative things about people, again, removes curiosity, removes vulnerability. You do not have the ability to connect to people if your approach is, I am looking for the ways you are a problem. Because nobody wants to be
Mm-hmm.
with somebody that looks at you like that. And that is kind of, unfortunately, what our current state of mental health content does to people. So sorry for my long-winded rant, but there it is.
No, I appreciate you. You were cooking. You had some bars going on there.
I
Angela
promise
shaking her head.
you.
Yeah.
Yes, like I'm cheering because I have cat noise, but I'm cheering everything you're saying because, like, I think what, and I didn't say it, but surveillance, the fact that the surveillance state is not even hiding itself anymore. Those sticky, sweaty, gross human experiences that we were used to having, we were able to have because no one had a camera phone in your face.
Mm.
I shudder to think of all the times I did stuff that would be, if it came back now on camera, good God Almighty. Like, I was a hot mess in the 90s. I promise you I was. I don't know how I'm still here. But no one had a camera in your face. No
Yeah, like
one,
it took effort. It took so much effort.
like, you didn't even think about it. Like, I'm on this grimy, sticky dance floor with all of these grimy, sticky people because it's, and this is a shout out to Jacksonville, Florida. They had a BDSM club that did a thing on it was service industry sin night on Saturday night seduction. And they had
Nice.
a guy that lit at the end of the culmination of his performance is that they lit the whips that he flogged people. It was hot, literally. But like, you don't camera film that. Like, those experiences happen because we weren't being watched in the way that we are watched now. We weren't being forced to be as self-conscious in the way that we are now when the person standing next to you is holding a phone in your face because they like what you're doing and they want to go viral on whatever platforms they're on. That didn't
Mhm.
exist. And so, thinking about how the surveillance state makes people more, again, know your enemy. Like, yeah, you might be shy, but you also might be being cautious because everything you do, every place you show your face, the rise of biometric technologies, everything, the most innocuous things you think you're doing, someone is recording you. It takes away from the
Mhm.
experience of simply being human. And that there's no way that that does not translate into the way that we relationship with each other versus, no matter what those relationships are. Like, you can't be yourself, truly yourself, if you know that someone is watching you. I mean, that's just the way it is being human. Nobody wants to look stupid. Like somebody just
Right.
said, no, like Innate said, no one wants to be called cringe. No
Right.
one wants to be
Yeah.
mocked because you dance funny. No one, or hoping that the internet finds you quirky enough to make whoever's recording you against your will and not with your knowledge most of the time go viral. Like, we can't,
Right.
that's no way to live. It impinges on your ability to simply be a human being and to relate to other people as a human being and to accept their nasty, messy, contradictory, and ultimately like glorious ways of being human. Like, it you know, this thing is not linear.
Mhm.
It's not, it doesn't work just one way. It doesn't, the human experience is messy. It's not linear. It is complicated. It is uncomfortable. But that is the human experience. And it is core to what we are as human beings. And we can't give that up and we can't lose that.
Totally agree. I mean, why, try to fit yourself into a little ice cube tray? Be a neat little ice cube, perfect little rectangle. Yeah, we
That's
don't do those.
that's not what we are. And also, question the cube tray they're trying to pour you into.
Hmm.
Why does this need to be where I go? Why can't I just be water? Why do I have to
Mm.
freeze? Why do I have to go over here? Why do I have to do that? Why can't I just be water? Why can't I just be steam? Like,
Right,
there's
right.
all these other ways of being. Why do I have to be poured into your little funky tray? I don't want to be in your little funky tray. I want to be something else.
Totally, totally agree. We actually lost Ikoi. I'm not
That's
sure what happened.
crazy.
So let me ask you a question before we get into the ones that I sent you guys. Maybe she'll come back in.
I hope so.
I don't know if you like to watch rom coms. Oh,
God,
she's
no.
back at the
I'm
stage.
Yay!
We got her back.
Yay!
that was a mistake on my part. Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
You
So,
didn't miss
ladies,
nothing.
ladies, why do people on rom coms always have money?
This is a capitalist machine that's making these films, and that's the thing that they want, the expectation that they want people to aspire to. Like, if you want love, you need to have money. This is films being made under capitalism. And if it's not the person having money, it's two people who luck into it, or the same way they're heteronormative. Like, the propaganda machine's way of making sure that, you know, y'all stay in line and be good little capitalist heterosexual consumers.
Hmm. I'm not a fan of rom coms. I don't like the. I
You
don't like.
know, it's I always joke, right? Like I was talking to I'm a film person, so I was talking to like one of my film nerd friends, and this was a long time ago. This is when like, you know, Bridget, what's her name's diary was like, you know, in the theaters, right? And
Mhm.
you know, he was a very gay dude. He was writing, you know, for his film course on like the history and kind of analysis of rom-coms, right? And so we happened to be talking about the film, and he was just like, you know, the more and more I look at rom-coms, right, it is he's like it's marketed to men, but it's men's vision of relationships marketed to women. And that this was, you know, this is like way back in the aughts, right? And like I never liked rom-coms, but I never, and aside from like, you know, there are certain rom-coms that I like Princess Bride. I don't know if that's like a pure rom-com genre, but that's one of my favorite films. And there have been like, you know, a couple of like foreign rom-coms that are actually, it's not the necessarily the portrayal of romance in the film that's appealing, but because it's so like, you know, very witty and just funny and great screenwriting, you know. So I don't think the rom-com genre in general, you know, has to be so bad. But I think he was right in what makes it really bad is it's an enforcement of, you know, the male vision of what a relation or what women should be onto women.
And like thinking about, because there's so much about princesses, I think like I'm embarrassed to admit I liked Ever After with Drew Barrymore. I ain't gonna lie, I did. I
Okay.
like she wasn't that character wasn't she wasn't passive, I think is the thing that I like most about it. But
Hmm.
like when I'm thinking about the fairy tale, I have a deep love for dark fairy tales, like the original way fairy tales are told,
Oh, when
how
people
Mhm.
die.
bloody and vicious and conniving and get sealed into barrels at the end of it that are studded with nails and rolled down a hill.
Mhm.
That is my shit. That is my shit.
It's
So like I, and I think that is my, like, I made a face when we were talking about, because when you say rom com, my knee jerk reaction is go but it's because of what Ikoi said, like, it's made, these producers are men. The scripts that they approve are scripts that are in line with their vision of what they think women and female people and people across the spectrum want. And they don't know shit about us people, or they would know that's not a reflection of the way people love. Like,
Mhm.
it's not this neat little box with this one person that has means and the other person who needs means, and and like they get together and then everything works out. That's not life. That's not life. And it's not, at this point, it's not even an enjoyable form of escapism, because you're too harshly aware that it's bullshit. Nobody lives like that.
Yeah.
Like, give me an escapism that looks like something I can get a hold of. You know what I'm saying? Like with people who look like me. So we're gonna start there. With people who are working class, and some of whom are queer, and some of whom have disabilities, and some of whom have kids, and some of whom have, you know, these complicated ways of existing, and are finding love in its myriad different forms in spite of these structures that are imposed on all of us. Tell me about that. But like this idea of like this fluffy middle class family, this person with this high stakes job meeting this person who's just, this man who's just emotionally unavailable, but he just needs his heart softened. Kiss my ass. That's not anything I know about. I find it boring. and to hell with it, flush it away and give me something I can work with.
I hear
Yeah.
you. I hear you. So, let's go to the next question. What is the most absurd piece of dating advice you've encountered online lately?
Oh boy. The most absurd. Well, I think this is the thing, right? I think almost all dating advices are often absurd because it won't apply to a segment of the population, right?
Mm.
If you're, and that just goes for advice in general, but like, advice is about being tailored to the person. When you're dealing with humanity, you don't have set rules, right? And that's kind of, that is often what causes anxiety in people. And that anxiety is something that, for example, the manosphere really captures and tries to capitalize on, right? Is that people are different. People have different needs. People have different desires. People have different interests, right? And you have to figure that out when you meet people, right? So, there are, I mean, like, very few dating advices really, ultimately work for people. So it's one of those things where, like, I am against dating advice. I am somebody, and maybe that is because I work in mental health, that, I am more for dating questions, good questions.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said. Angela?
Nah, that was bars right there.
Hmm.
Like, we don't need advice. Like, and I think that's to your earlier point, Ikoi, about being curious, which really I think that's gold. Being curious. Well, being that I don't date anymore, thankfully, I was thinking about, and I wrote down, what is what do I remember being one of the dumbest things I heard? Send your representative. Like,
Mm.
not your real self, because the person you're dating or introducing yourself doesn't need to know exactly who you are. Send your representative. This idea, you like basically your avatar. Send them on the date with this person. I've always thought that was the stupidest shit, because they're gonna meet if they like you, they're gonna meet the real you at some point, whether you intend for them to or not. It pops out. So lead from honesty. Lead, which circles back to what we've been talking about the whole time with vulnerability. Lead with who you really are. I mean, I that's dumb. Why would you mislead yourself or mislead other
Mhm.
people and then say a bunch of things that you're not going to remember you even said, and get tangled around tangled up in your own feet? Start out with who you are, and the people who are intended to find you will find you. And if they don't, that's not how that goes. But stay curious and stay open. But don't send your representative. Nobody wants to meet a damn avatar. They're going to find out who you are anyway.
Totally agree. Worst advice I've heard in a while was communicate, communicate, communicate. And it sounds like good advice, probably in most, if not all, situations. But how many times are you going to say to your living partner, pick up your underwear and put it in the laundry? Here, I put a laundry right next to it for you. Please just put this in the laundry. Or wash dishes, or whatever the labor things people are doing and getting upset about. Communication is not necessarily the answer. How many times are you going to communicate the same thing? You can try to do it in different ways, but communication might not be the issue. So, shouldn't be a one size fits all solution. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Next question. What's the dumbest thing people do thinking it's romantic?
I think, and again, right, I think this is, there are things that people do that I'm sure would get, that I find, like, endearing, that might, like, people that will offend other people or give other people icks, right? So wait, so with something, what gestures do I find romantic? Was that the question?
The question is, what's the dumbest thing people do thinking it's romantic?
Right. And so, like, again, like a lot of guys, especially guys tend to be almost like very, I've noticed, at least the ones that I talk to, that are struggling with dating, is they tend to be very script based. Is like, this is what women want. And again, like, I think that's where they go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like, uh, what is one of the dumbest things that like I have ever seen, that like a guy was just like, oh, like I thought it was going to be like romantic, right?
Yeah.
Was, like, so it's just like, okay, like, it's nice that you were kind of paying attention and you thought that, since, you date like to go out hiking and stuff, to plan for a hike, but you did not plan for mosquitoes.
True.
You did not, and it's just like, and again, like, it's like, clearly you're not a hiker, because if you were a hiker, you would know that, like, this is not the certain time of year to be going to certain places, right? And clearly she was also like either not familiar with the area or didn't do a lot of hiking, because she agreed to it. you
Now you
know,
have Lyme disease. Now you have malaria.
right? And again, like, that's also one of the things of like sending your representative,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Because, like, I am, maybe it's a California thing, but it is just like, I like hiking is oftentimes such a filler word that means nothing at this point. Because I know a lot of people that write that shit down because they're like, oh, it's healthy, it's kind of, but like, do they actually go hiking? No.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people write so many things on their profile. Like, I've even like looked at some of my friends when they've written profiles, and I'm just like, I don't think this is accurate. They're like, really? And I'm just like, I mean, like, I know you want to do these things, but you don't do them, right?
Yeah.
And again, that's kind of like what sending your representatives is about. And so they're like, well, what should I write? And it's like, no, you should write that you want to try these things rather than that you do them.
That's the answer. That is the answer. She's giving you the cheat sheet, you guys. Just pay attention. To me, I'm gonna put this comment up. Henry Bemis says the dumbest thing is never try to surprise someone. I think the dumbest thing is like the big romantic gesture, because that's very coercive. You're trying to like make sure that someone gives a certain response, and I think that's wrong and inappropriate. No surprise engagements either. You should have talked about that beforehand. Yeah. So last question. Most honest love song you've heard in the past few years?
I think honest depends on where you are and where you're experiencing of love.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're heartbroken, it's gonna be, I got a whole playlist for dead ass. Like, I got a whole playlist of songs that I play when you know, I'm done with somebody. But being that that's not where I am, I have a bigger playlist of places where I'm in love. So I mean, like, I think it just depends. The song depends on what speaks to you, depends on where you are in your love
Mm-hmm.
experience. And the two that I put down, like, if I, my go-tos back in the day when, my heart was broken, something very honest.
Mm-hmm.
Al Green, How Do You Mend a Broken Heart?
Mm.
Like, this is somebody that's like, yo, you're crying, you're in pain. Like, I don't know what to do with this kind of pain. I haven't been taught
Mhm.
how to address this thing, and you don't want to always burden your friends with it. Sometimes you just got to sit with it and walk through it. Like, how do you mend a broken heart? And then for where I am right now, um is um is Rai X and the Los Hermanos Gutierrez, and the song is called You. And it's just very stripped
Hmm.
down, very simple. It's the interiority of being in an intimate relationship with somebody. It's the small things. It's being, you know, how do I, this person, you are that close to me. Like, you are a part of me with while being separate, but like, I am so thoroughly engaged with your presence.
Mhm.
I am captivated with your presence. And it's just very simple. It's very stripped down. It's not excessively flowery. It doesn't make a bunch of overblown promises about what love is. It's just simple. It's the everyday, quotidian things about loving somebody else.
Nice. Ikoi?
Um, I picked Jealousy by Pet Shop Boys, and not necessarily the jealousy part of the song, but there's a line in there that says, like, I never knew till I met you,
Mhm.
right? And the reason that I love that line so much is because I think one of the things that's very profound about like any kind of really close connection is that they unmask things that you've been pushing away or hiding,
Mhm.
right? And like to a certain degree, that's the thing about like vulnerability, right? Because we are the thing about vulnerability is that we are not, our conscious mind is really not what informs our behavior. It's kind of our subconscious drivers, but there are so many things that we're not even aware of that we've like pushed away, or like I can't look at this, or I don't want to look at this, or I don't have the ability to look at this, that like close friendships and close relationships of any kind, and challenges within that really bring up in and it is like the thing that's so great about human connection is not just like community and like the community is great, and like having friends and lovers and all these things are absolutely wonderful, but like we can only live in ourselves, we can only live in our own bodies, we don't have the ability to like live other people's lives. And so one of the most profound things about close connection is that you get to meet different versions and different parts of yourself that you didn't know existed.
Nice.
So that is my favorite love song
That's really
for
cool.
this
Oh,
piece.
thank you for sharing that with us. Um, so, okay, let me put this comment on the screen for myself. So, I was always told that the greatest love song in the English language was Peter Gabriel in Your Eyes.
I
Yeah,
love that song actually.
it is a good song.
It's
It is.
cute. It's cute, but I'm not finna stand outside your window blasting it. I'm sorry.
That's the thing.
Like there is entirely too much Prince for that. Okay, too much Prince to
Fair.
be out there with. Why would I pick Peter Gabriel? If I'm gonna stand outside your window, it's gonna be Prince's Adore or something along them, Insatiable or something along them lines. But again, that's a Gen X flex.
Adore is good. Pink Cashmere, I really like.
Oh yes.
I have a super long list, but whenever people tell me that Peter Gabriel in Your Eyes is the greatest love song in the English language, I always say it's Def Leppard, Pour Some Sugar on Me. And
And
that is my wedding song.
Def Leppard Love
Ah,
Bites. Love Bites.
Okay, Love Bite.
Love Bites.
Okay. I'll check that one out. But I would say one of my favorite love songs, and one of the ones that I always found a lot of truth in, was Donny Hathaway, Sack Full of Dreams. So
Ooh,
I guess it's very Toussaint of me, but it's not a romantic love song. It's sort of about his dreams for the world.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's
And
about right. I think
yeah.
people like we talk about love on the left. Like I've seen that referenced a lot, and I think one thing that when we're talking about people who are actually leftists,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of confusion there because people are calling Democrats leftists, and I want to slap them. Like baby, baby, never, never ever. But like love on the left, you're not just thinking about your love in terms of like thinking about myself. I don't think about my relationship with my wife as something that is this encapsulated thing. My relationship with my wife and how is that relationship impacted by things that are happening in the world? How is my love for my wife something I can translate into bigger action to make sure that people everywhere can love the person that they love
Mm-hmm.
and be loved back and not have these strictures leaning down on them to make your love impossible or hard or difficult. So like I think about like you were saying, Donny Hathaway, one of my favorite songs in that vein is Harvest for the World by the Isley Brothers. I want y'all all to be
Mm-hmm.
all right. I want to be all right and I want you to be all right too.
Mm-hmm. That's an excellent note to end this on. I want to thank you, ladies, again. I really appreciate you being here. I feel like this was a banger of an episode. But please, chat and viewers and listeners, please let us know. You can write us letters. Jason will give you some kind of address, some kind of email, or you can just put it in the comments. That would be great. I want to see a ton of comments on this. I need feedback. I need feedback on this format as well. Let me know how you like it. We're very close to 2,000, 20,000 subscribers. Please subscribe to get us there. Every subscriber is another step closer to us getting a plaque for Jason. I'd really like that for him. Thank you so much again, and we are out.
Yay! Nice meeting everyone.